The time is 0512. Thousands of kilometers from the front lines, a freight train slices through the frozen darkness. It carries 200 tons of ammunition. North Korean-made munitions feeding Russian artillery in the brutal warfare across Ukraine. The crew, alone in the vastness of Siberia, is oblivious. They have no idea that in minutes, their world will end. This transport mission is about to become a point of catastrophic failure. This is a deliberate surgical strike, a strike executed by a Ukrainian ghost squad. These soldiers conducted a mission so deep inside enemy lines, Moscow deemed it impossible. They moved through frozen taiga. They defeated sophisticated biometric traps. They dodged the ever-watchful eye of the military. They neutralized high-tech Russian electronic warfare jammers and mapped shifting security patrols, all for this one explosive moment. For months, the commander of this elite unit obsessed over the Trans-Siberian Railway, a critical artery of this war. He analyzed every schedule, every security protocol, every vulnerable junction that fed the modern weapons to the front. Ammunition that would soon target his own people. His target selection was a masterclass in war analysis. A remote expanse near Khabarovsk. Here, for a critical 3 kilometers, the massive Trans-Siberian dual tracks become one. A single line, a brutal, strategic bottleneck for Moscow's army. To sever this line meant crippling their defense. The only alternative, the BAM line, forces an impossible detour of 1,400 kilometers. This is modern warfare. The mission could not originate from the heavily fortified western border, where all crossings are monitored by relentless defense systems. Biometric scans and constant patrols made it a death trap. Instead, the operators planned an exceptionally complex maneuver. Aided by a carefully cultivated network of clandestine local assets, the team first infiltrated through Kazakhstan, then Mongolia, finally into the Russian Far East. To keep their essential defense technology functioning, they had to innovate. Critical devices were wrapped in chemical heating pads against the sub-zero bite. Every mile was a calculated risk. Power conservation was a constant battle. One dead battery meant mission failure, a silent death for the troops in the wilderness. But the crushing cold was just the beginning. At 0530, as they closed in, Russia unleashed a silent weapon, electronic warfare. A military update for this corridor. Previously unknown jammers were activated along the railway's choke points. These systems were designed to blind and confuse. For the team, they represented a potential mission kill event. The success of the operation depended on the GPS precise placement of the explosive charges. They had to sever the rails. The cuts had to be at pre-planned structural weak points. Without GPS, finding them in the pitch-black void was nearly impossible. Their time on target would increase exponentially. Exposure would be total. The team lead consulted his navigation unit. The readout was a ghost, jumping between coordinates almost 200 kilometers apart. The global conflict had become analog. High-tech infiltration was reduced to its most primal form, map and compass. They were navigating by hand. Their movements slowed to a crawl. Each kilometer now consumed 40 minutes, not the planned 15. The timeline was collapsing. Every step was a race against a clock they were now losing. The dangers were multiplying. They were not just electronic or environmental. They were human. Nearing the objective, disaster loomed in the form of a local patrol. A routine checkpoint, a police stop. One team member was pulled from the line, but Operator 3 was ready. His cover story, a vital layer of personal defense. It held under scrutiny, but the interrogation dragged on, burning precious minutes. He rejoined the squad, but the close call was a cold shock, a brutal reminder of their position in this undeclared war. The margin for error had vanished. Their timeline was shredded. The troops were forced to recalculate on the move. The mission, however, was still viable. They were closing on the Khabarovsk junction. This was the target area. Here, technical intelligence pinpointed a critical vulnerability. The Trans-Siberian line narrowed, its heavy tracks exposed. The infrastructure was formidable. Russia's R-65 rails, 65 kilograms of hardened steel per meter, a core component of their defense systems. Engineered to handle brutal 25-ton axle loads, built to survive the relentless Siberian winter. But even hardened steel has a breaking point, a fatal weakness. At 1,370 degrees Celsius, steel loses 90% of its strength. The soldiers carried the key. Their specialty: incendiary charges, modern weapons designed to exploit that single vulnerability, ready to burn brighter than the sun. They would generate temperatures hot enough to liquefy steel, eating through the rails like a plasma torch. Once initiated, the thermal reaction would be self-sustaining, a chemical fire impossible to extinguish. Placement was everything. Maximum stress on the rails occurs 2.4 meters before each joint. The precise point of impact. Place the charges there, and a multi-thousand-ton train at 80 kilometers per hour does the rest. Its own momentum becomes the weapon. The cargo carrier transformed into a wrecking ball, a brutal lesson in modern warfare physics. The team needed to position 12 charges across 400 meters of track. Each one required GPS synchronization, but persistent jammers saturated the airspace. A terrifying complication: remote detonation was impossible. They had to hardwire a backup, hundreds of meters of detonation cord, laid by hand in the frozen dark, a critical element for these army troops. The cord had to remain invisible to track inspectors. Russian military railway security ran on a schedule. Predictable patterns: foot patrols every 6 hours, inspection vehicles every 12. In that clockwork, there was a flaw. One crucial detail made the mission feasible. Maintenance crews worked Wednesday nights through Thursday mornings. It created a precious 90-minute window, a brief period where unexplained activity was less likely to trigger alarms from the local defense. They had one opportunity per week. Miss it, and the Special Warfare Unit would wait 7 more days. 7 more days in hostile territory, their cover stretched thin. The nature of their defense technology created another pressure. The chemical reaction would produce an immense heat signature, an ultra-bright light, a fire visible for miles. They had only seconds from ignition before Russian surveillance, from ground sensors to Air Force assets, would detect the signature. By then, it had to be too late. The latest military update raised the stakes. The intel was fresh. The approaching train wasn't just carrying supplies. It was a mobile arsenal. 1,200 tons of North Korean ammunition. The manifest listed 152mm shells, grad rockets, and mortar rounds. Taking out these weapons would be a major victory. The war analysis confirmed it would diminish Russian artillery capabilities for weeks. This transformed the mission from tactical to strategic, a disruption into a strategic masterstroke. But it also painted the train as a priority target for every military asset in the region. It would be subject to random patrols, altered schedules, and intense surveillance. At 0605 hours, the strike team reached the target junction. Through the green phosphorus glow of night vision, the obstacle was immediate. A Russian security patrol. Their vehicle sat 200 meters distant, engine idling. A plume of cigarette smoke drifted in the frozen air. The patrol was 3 hours ahead of schedule. The team lead's mind raced through the tactical calculus, a frantic series of calculations. Option 1: abort. But the ammunition train, a key element of this war, was scheduled for 0745. Missing this window meant months of intelligence wasted, and thousands more friendly soldiers facing a barrage of enemy shells. Option 2: proceed. Risk compromise. If caught, the consequences were a black hole of unthinkable outcomes. He chose the third option, the most dangerous. He dispatched one operator 500 meters north to create a diversion, a small fire, in an abandoned maintenance shed, just enough to draw the enemy troops away. Starting a fire at -35 Celsius required accelerant. This guaranteed any future investigation would find hard evidence, a conscious trade. They were sacrificing future anonymity for immediate tactical advantage. And it worked. The patrol took the bait, their vehicle tearing toward the flames. It bought them time, but there was no guarantee it would be enough. Properly placing the 12 charges. would normally take a full 20 minutes. They were forced to cut corners, foregoing backup sensors on their weapon system. Each shortcut drastically amplified the probability of mission failure. The operators shared a look, a silent acknowledgement, of the brutal mathematics and began placing the charges. Minutes evaporated. 8 charges set, 4 to go. The patrol was occupied, but they had radioed it in. Backup was inbound. 7 more minutes vanished. 10 charges placed, 2 remaining. The patrol began moving back toward their vehicle. 5 agonizing minutes later, 11 charges were armed, 1 to go. The patrol was 400 meters from a visual on the team, and closing fast. Then they felt it, a deep, terrifying rumble through the rails. The ammunition train was approaching. It was minutes early, pushing 80 kilometers per hour through the oppressive darkness. At that speed, it would hit the target zone in mere moments. The patrol was now 300 meters from a clear line of sight. The team faced an equation with no right answer. Finish the hard wiring and be compromised. Detonate now and miss the target. Flee and waste months of planning this critical defense operation. At 07:35 hours, the final charge clicked into place, but the critical hardwired backup remained incomplete. Only 8 of the 12 devices were linked. The train was now just minutes out. The patrol was 200 meters away. And closing. The charges had a 34-second operational window. The team lead's hands worked furiously, splicing the detonation cord, with fingers numbed by the bone-deep cold. Each connection had to be perfect. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. The ground began to vibrate violently. 3,000 tons of steel hammering down the tracks at 22 meters per second. 3 minutes. The patrol spotted movement. Their vehicle ground to a halt. A harsh voice crackled over their radio. Unidentified personnel near the tracks. Armed response is authorized. The 9th charge was connected. The cord was live. The patrol, now just 100 meters out. Closing distance, hunting in the dark. Stalking a ghost from a radio call. Suddenly, in the cab, the engineer's thermal scope lit up. Multiple contacts. Figures scrambling near the tracks. His blood ran cold. Those were not friendly troops. His hand shot for the radio. He keyed the mic, hitting the brakes. But the momentum of this war machine was absolute. 10th charge connected. The patrol was now 50 meters away. Weapons raised. The clock was ticking. 90 seconds until visual contact. 11th charge clicked into place. It was live. The train roared into the target zone. The patrol was almost on them. 60 seconds. The last charge was set. The placement was complete, but the mission was far from over. Now, the exfiltration. A 400-meter sprint to minimum safe distance. 30 seconds. The engine screamed past the first charge. It was decelerating too slowly. It would pass the kill zone. The team hit a concrete culvert 300 meters out. Not safe, but it was their only defense against the coming blast. Operator 2 gripped the detonator, his eyes fixed on the metal beast. In the cab, the engineer finally saw it. A brilliant white flash. The charges ignited. A star of pure energy erupted on the rail, followed by a shockwave that rattled the teeth. The vibration tore through the locomotive. The engineer slammed the emergency brake, a final, futile gesture. He understood a fraction of a second too late. All 12 charges fired as one. A coordinated defense technology strike. The reaction was instant, unstoppable. The thermite charge burned through hardened steel like plasma through ice, a lesson in modern weapons. The rails did not break. They liquefied. The locomotive, a multi-ton missile, hit the gap at 52 kilometers per hour. The front wheels plunged into empty space. Metal screamed. The entire engine pitched forward in a gut-wrenching lurch. Tons of steel ripped from the tracks. The coupling to the first car snapped like a twig. Behind it, 23 cars began to fold. A sequential, catastrophic derailment. The locomotive's abrupt stop sent a massive compression wave backward. The wave ripped through the train. The first car slammed onto its side, the container bursting at the seams. Its contents spilled violently across the landscape. The specialized storage for these sensitive weapons ruptured on impact. 152mm shells scattered across the frozen earth. The second and third cars followed, spilling grad rockets. The rockets tumbled from shattered crates. Cases of mortar rounds bounced across the gravel. A massive loss of military assets. This ammunition was built to endure rough handling. A crash alone is rarely the specific trigger for detonation. But the damage was total. The mission, a success. The train's own momentum had become the instrument of its destruction. The aftermath was a scene of industrial carnage. The locomotive lay on its side, steam hissing from ruptured lines. A 400-meter scar of twisted steel and destroyed track. Over 200 tons of North Korean ammunition lay exposed, rendered useless, undeliverable. The entire supply junction was blocked, a critical blow in this global conflict. The rail was destroyed so completely, the entire section required replacement. When Russian emergency vehicles arrived, they found the train's crew had survived. But the evidence left behind on the track was a cold, hard war analysis. It shattered every assumption Moscow held. The distinctive burn pattern, the surgical precision. This act of warfare was a message, and it had been received. Surgical placement, complete and total destruction. This was not an accident. This was the work of professionals, operating with impunity in the frozen darkness. That remote section of track cannot be rebuilt quickly. This single bottleneck controlled the flow of warfare. A massive percentage of all military freight between Vladivostok and Moscow, rerouting that traffic through the BAM, adds a crippling 1,400 kilometers to every shipment. This burns fuel the Russian military can't spare. It delays critical deliveries and creates a logistical nightmare for a rail line designed to handle a fraction of the volume. But the true victory wasn't just logistical, it was psychological. Russia and North Korea had operated under a fatal assumption. They believed their supply lines were untouchable, shielded by thousands of kilometers of their own territory. That assumption now lies twisted in the frozen wreckage. In Moscow, state media scrambled for a narrative. They immediately blamed a technical malfunction, touting the typical line about scheduled repairs and maintenance. But the footage secured by the Special Operations Team tells a different story, a truth that propaganda cannot bury. The Trans-Siberian Railway will be repaired. The weapons will eventually flow again. But a message was delivered. A military update etched in fire and steel. Nowhere is beyond reach, no supply line is safe, and North Korea's ammunition now costs Russia far more than money. It costs them sleep. This sabotage is proof that modern warfare isn't just fought with advanced weapons. It proves that a few determined soldiers can achieve what an entire air force cannot. A powerful war analysis in action. They struck fear into the heart of an empire that believed its homeland was inviolable. Moscow learned that night that every train, every bridge, every supply line is now a target, and their vast defense systems cannot protect them all.